Welcome to episode 57 of Kowalski Analysis, everyone. I want to introduce you to my new friend, Lorenz Dries. Did I pronounce that right, Lorenz?
Good enough, fair enough.
All right. So some of y'all might recognize Lorenz from YouTube, but if you don't, Lorenz Dries got struck by cancer not once, but twice. And today he makes a living on as a YouTuber and a life coach. Through his YouTube videos and Instagram posts, he aims to inspire others to think for themselves. His moniker on social media is now Wounded Viking. Welcome to Kowalski Analysis, Lorenz Dries.
Thank you, Rob. Appreciate it, man.
Absolutely, dude. Thanks for coming on. Hey, before we jump into it really quickly, I just want to mention my sponsor. I just want to share my screen real quick. And that is Mr. Micah Hughes. Micah is a good friend of mine, and Micah does everything real estate. So if you're in the market to buy a home, sell a home, or just want to get into real estate investing, please give Micah a call, 443-532-8450, and I'll put his email in the show notes. Okay. Without further ado, let's dive into this conversation. So where are you at? Are you in Belgium?
Yes, Belgium right now, close to Antwerp, if you heard of that.
I was in Romania a year and a half ago, and that's not far from Belgium, right?
That's the funniest thing. This is the classic conversation with every single person from America. They'll ask you where you're from in Europe, and you'll be like Belgium. And then they'll proceed to name a country that is literally 8 hours away, 10 hours away by car. And they'll be like, oh, I have an uncle that spends in Sweden. That's basically Belgium, right? It's not really. It's entirely different place, and we don't have anything in common, but that is a common thing to hear. No, Romania, I don't even know. I think it's like a 2-day travel by car. So I never even been to Romania. So it's quite different. And if you would go from Belgium to Romania, you would see that it's nothing alike. But I have found, because I have my main audience is from the States, American people often tend to compare. They tend to think that we are like the United States of Europe, because it's the same, like it looks the same, and you can very easily compare states to countries as they have the same geographical size and population, but it's not quite the same. Like, we're all very different. And even in Belgium, I'm not going to get too much into the Belgian topic, but we have 6 governments. We are a tiny country. We have 3 different languages in our tiny country. And even I'm from the Flemish part, so we also have a French speaking part. And we don't even identify, we feel vastly different from our French neighbors while we're all from the same country. So it's complex. It's very complex. And yeah.
I thought exactly what you said, because I traveled from Romania to Greece, and we drove through a bunch of countries. And the countries, you're right, it's like going through states in the United States, and every one of them has a different language. And I'm like, why? That's got to be so confusing, because you guys are so close together, but everybody speaks different languages. It is very different, because in the United States, everybody speaks English, so it's easy to travel around and communicate. So you'd have to be, I guess, you'd have to know all those different languages to really be able to get around. Or a lot of people speak English.
At this point, it depends. Like, I feel like I would say Belgium in many ways is like the equator of Europe when it comes to, Belgium is right in the middle, right? It's also often called the heart of Europe. And that's also why Brussels is where the European Union has its headquarters. But if you go up from Belgium, so Germany, the Netherlands, Denmark, all those type of countries, everyone speaks perfect English. Mm. If you go down Belgium, France, Spain, Italy, Portugal, most people don't speak a lick of English. And that's mainly due to the culture of dubbing, which is so crazy when you think about it. So they still, when you watch a show in France or in Spain, they'll be playing Friends, for example, like a classic show, and it'll be dubbed in French. So you will hear these crazy French voices when Ross or Rachel talks. I hope your audience knows who Ross or Rachel is. I don't know.
Everybody in America knows who they are, yeah.
Good. So that's why they stay in their French or Spanish or Italian lane, whereas, not to sound pretentious, but I was speaking fluent English at the age of 9, because I used to sit on my mother's lap, watch The Bold and the Beautiful, which is another epic soap opera from the States. My mom used to watch it, and I grew up on that. So I would see the Forrester family have their feuds with the American language while having Dutch subtitles. So obviously a child's brain is like a sponge. So I would just connect the audio with the letters. And one day my parents found out when we had a friend over from Ireland that I spoke English, because they never knew, obviously, because we don't speak English. But then she asked me a question and I started talking to her. I didn't get that from school, just from TV. Please, if anyone from legislation in those countries is watching, stop dubbing your shows. You are doing your people a great disservice.
Great point. So yeah, the only thing I know about, I think Belgium would be Jean-Claude Van Damme. I know he's from Brussels. That's about all I know. Is he like a big national hero over there?
He's definitely known. The only time he gets brought up is when we speak to foreigners and mainly Americans, because he was so big on the action movie scene. He's
right.
Not
sure.
really, I wouldn't say he doesn't. He never gets brought up, and we don't identify with him really. But again, when speaking to American people, like, they love him, and
yeah.
I like the guy. I'm proud of his achievements, and he definitely put Belgium on the map in terms of, again, in terms of the US.
Yeah.
Another thing that Americans often say is waffles. They have this thing with waffles, that we are all about waffles. And I really wonder where that comes from, because we don't really, our culture is centered around Belgian beers and chocolates, if anything.
What's the big Belgian beer that's over here? It's the Chalice. What's that one, right? Isn't that a Belgian beer?
What's it called?
The tagline is, it's not a glass, it's a chalice. You don't know what I'm talking about?
No, I'm trying to figure out, because I'm sure you're mispronouncing it. So
thanks. I'm making all the typical mistakes that Americans make.
Yeah, it's okay, man. It's okay. Like, we are such a tiny, we wouldn't even be a state in the US. We would be a city, basically. You could put, I think LA has more inhabitants than Belgium, I think, even.
I'm thinking of Stella Artois.
Oh yeah, okay, Stella, of course. Yeah. That's one of her
beer, right?
Yeah. Very good Belgian beer. I support that. I think that's a good one. We also but that's a good one.
Well, let's dive into your story, man, because I'm sure everybody's eager to hear. So I learned about you just about a week or two ago. Somebody posted your video that you have made, said that being unattractive is a disability. They posted in a Facebook group that I own. And I watched it, and they were like, this guy would be great to get on your podcast. And somebody reached out that helps me. And here we are. I really just want to tell everybody a little bit about your story, so they know who you are and how you got to be who you are right now. So can you fill us in a little bit?
Okay, I'll try to keep it as concise as I can, because as it is a long story. So basically, it all starts around 2012. I was living in Barcelona at the time, when I first started experiencing symptoms. When I went jogging, I would come down on my right foot and feel a strong aching pain in my lower right jaw every time I came down on my right foot. I, at the time, was living with my then girlfriend, who was from Sweden, and we moved to Stockholm to go and live there together. And in the midst of that, I was flying back and forth between Sweden and Belgium to get this thing figured out. So initially, it appeared that I had a cyst that had been brewing there for many, many years, and that had been slowly eating away at my jaw. Now, how that cyst was formed was due to two wisdom teeth that were not removed when they should have been removed, that kind of started pushing up against each other, creating a gap in the process that became filled with dirt over time. That dirt accumulated and turned into a cyst, and then that cyst slowly started growing and eating away at my jawbone. So the cyst got removed, and the hole got filled up with crushed bone from my hip. And that should have been that, but that wasn't that. And the issues persisted, and the cyst kept coming back. And this basically went on for about 1.5 years, up until the point where the cyst turned into a Serrato cyst. In Dutch we say keratocyst, which is a cyst that has the ability to turn and become a malign tumor over time, which then also happens. So basically, I went through 2 years of basically trying to solve it and fix it, and then, in the end, it was cancer, and it just turned into this huge, bulging red tennis ball of a tumor that was just sticking out. It was disgusting and throbbing, a lot of pain, and it got to the point where it was either in my jaw or my life. So they had to cut off, amputate my entire right jaw, they constructed a new jaw using my lower left leg. So the tissue, the bone and the flesh, my lower left fibula, if you want to get technical.
Mhm.
And they constructed a new jaw. So that was a marathon surgery. It took about 16 hours.
Where was your girlfriend in that? All this? Did she stick with you?
No. So we broke up. We broke up before the actual diagnosis of cancer. We did know something was very wrong, but she was actually, the plan for us was to move to Australia. I didn't put that in there to not make it confusing, but so Sweden was like a pit stop, and she was going to study medicine in Australia, and I was going to follow suit. But then I couldn't come because I kept having to go back to the hospital. And obviously, like at some point, we didn't see each other for months. And it just got, yeah, it's just so happened that we broke up because, yeah, when you're in different sides of the world, it's hard. She did not break up with me. She didn't know I had cancer at the time. She did know something was wrong, but she didn't know. And yeah, so reconstructive surgery. Then I had radiotherapy on that job. And then it took me about a good 2 years of rehabilitation, spending time in a wheelchair. I also suffered a compartment syndrome on my lower left leg, so that also went wrong. Just about anything that could go wrong went wrong, so I couldn't walk for a long time. And I just spent about 2 years trying to become human again. So
what years were these?
this was 2013, 2014.
And you were living with your folks probably at the time?
Yes. So I moved back with my parents. I was completely, I couldn't do anything anymore. I couldn't bathe myself. I couldn't speak. I couldn't eat. I had a feeding tube right through my stomach to get liquid food. Yeah, I was literally reduced to, I was a very strong athletic man, always traveling, I felt always invincible. And then I just went to like literally the final stage before basically dying. I was a skeleton, because when you're eating liquid food, obviously you're not really gaining weight anymore.
But your brain was working normally.
Yes, my brain was fine.
Which actually makes it worse, because here you're waking up every day, you're completely aware of your situation. And what was that like?
It was, the thing about that is every time you wake up, you need like a good 5 seconds to remember like that it wasn't all a nightmare. And that's always the worst part, waking up and then realizing I didn't dream, I didn't make this up. I'm still here in this hospital bed, strapped to it. Like I can't go anywhere. I can't even lay on my side because I got tubes in and out everywhere. And it's just something weird happens with your brain when that happens. You just you lose grip on reality, and you just start focusing on every little thing that you can that gives you joy. So just like getting visitors for me was big, or getting like a drink. Like they would take like this cotton thing and then dip it into an iced tea, which I like to drink. And then they would just put it on my tongue. And that way I was able to experience the taste of iced tea. And that would be like the highlights of my day. And then after being stuck in the hospital for months and finally being allowed to go home, it was such a trip being in my car, my dad's car, and looking out the window and seeing cars again and people in the outside world. I had become entirely detached from that. It was really weird. Like, so for some reason, you forget who you were. Like very like, you just go in survival mode and you identify with your new way of being, which is just like a helpless creature just laying there, not being able to do anything. And it's really, it took me years. It took me years to, like, the first time it took me 2 years to get back to being like myself again, more or less, obviously. Figuring out how to deal with it. And then as soon as I was capable of taking care of myself again, I was like, I gotta catch up all this lost time. I gotta
go out and enjoy life or whatever.
Exactly. So I felt like I already lost, because I got struck when I was 24, which is arguably your absolute prime as a human being. Like, you're not 18 anymore, you're not an idiot anymore, but you still have that youthful, crazy power and energy that's so for being young. But you're wise, not really wise, but like you're not stupid anymore. Like when you're 19 or 20, nobody really respects you. Like you're a kid. But then you're 24, so I got struck when you're about to take off. All my friends are getting careers and making money, doing crazy travels, and I'm just stuck there. So my thing was, I got to catch up quick. I got to take a shortcut. So I moved to LA. Never had spent a day in LA, but I just based it on my perception of TV and YouTube. LA seemed the place to be. I watched a lot of YouTube. Obviously, a lot of the vloggers at the time were there. So I just felt like if I go to LA, surely I will run into someone and something will happen. That was literally my my plan. Like, I guess the same plan that every attractive woman in her small village has, like where everyone thinks they're the most beautiful woman they've ever seen, and they just think I'm gonna go to LA and I'm gonna run into the man of my dreams at a cocktail bar in a hotel, and or a producer is gonna see me and say, "Oh, you've got it." And then you realize when you get to LA that every single person in LA was the man or the woman in their little small hometown, and their definition, no one is really special anymore, because it's just like all the people with crazy egos and ambitions like myself go there, and then it's, oh, all right, so everyone is here for the same reason.
Absolutely, dude. I've been to LA and I've experienced the same thing. Just even worse than that, it's super pretentious because everybody's trying to put on a front of someone maybe that they're not exactly, and it's very uptight because of that, versus people just taking the mask off, relaxing and being yourself, which is way more attractive in my opinion. But I wanted to ask you about, I was actually on a live stream yesterday with a woman that has a special needs child, and we were talking about her experience. Her child has multiple seizures a day, and now she's grateful for seizures that stop, she said, because it's like what you said about finding the thing to be grateful for. And Paul in the Bible, he talks about, I learned the secret of being content, whatever the circumstance. And I was saying to that woman, I was like, it has to be gratitude. I'm like, because that's the only way to be content. And something like the circumstances that you're in is you have to find that gratitude. And does that carry over now? Because I wonder if, like, now that you got back to living a normal life, are you still, did you like change something about yourself internally that you're able to just be a lot more grateful all the time? Or does your system revert back to that normal default setting of just, it takes a certain amount to please me? Because that's what I wondered. Does something going through something like that change you?
Very good question. So obviously my trauma was extensive enough to the point that it actually happened a second time, to the point where it happened long enough for there to be permanent change, luckily. But I think the single greatest thing that human beings are good at is the art of forgetting. We're really good at forgetting stuff. And that's why biologically we were able to succeed through all those centuries of watching our loved ones die, getting eaten by wild animals, and the war and all these things. So that has helped me, as in a sense, to not be my trauma, not be my cancer, not spend every day crying and asking myself why. But at the same time, sometimes I feel like I have forgotten too much, and I catch myself. I have caught myself reverting, drifting back into that rat race mentality again, starting to take less chances, starting to think more long term, all the things that I swore that I would never do again. Laying in that bed, I promise myself every night, if I ever get out of here, I'm never going to live my life for others again. Like, I'm going to, like, meaning not do what others want me to do. Like, I do want to live my life in service of others, but I'm not going to live my life according to your standards. And that is definitely lessened again over the years. Like, you become conditioned again. Like, again, you start taking your health for granted. Now, luckily, ironically for me, I'm still having surgeries, and I had 3 surgeries the last 4 months after not having had 2 surgeries 2 years, after not having had surgeries for 2 years prior to that. So those 2 years of not having surgeries, I was again slipping back into that typical general society mindset, being more conservative, taking less chances, taking less risks, forgetting what I've been through, which is a good thing. But then I had my surgeries. I once again had complications, a lot of pain, a lot of suffering, and I was like, "Oh, this is how it is." I'm literally one instance away from being back in the hospital, like one accident away, one illness away.
Yeah.
So now I'm back in that super hungry mode of thinking just like the only thing is this, like today, like that's the only thing that exists. Like the future is not real. It's a projection based on our expectations and hopes. It's not something tangible or real. Like you can never be in the future. You never get there, and it's never the way you thought it would be. And the past is not real either. The past is just this romanticized version of facts that have happened to us. And people can be in the shittiest relationship ever, and then 5 years later they'll be, oh, but that was the one. Like,
You're right. Absolutely. I've seen that, man. So I really want to dig into this with you, though, because I know you help people with this. So I had a near-death experience about 10 years ago, and it shook me to the point that I changed my whole life and have accomplished so much more in the last 10 years than I accomplished the 38 before that. And I tried So I have a coaching program where I try to give people something similar. Like they write their own eulogy, and there's some other exercises that kind of try to wake them up and give them, mimic the experience that I had. And now, what do you do for people to help them that obviously haven't gone through what you've gone through, but is there a way that you help them take that risk and get grateful? Or is there any practical ways that you can share?
So are you asking me about in terms of my coaching individually or just in general?
Either. I know I won't want you to give away all your secrets of your coaching, obviously, but is there any like practical tips that you could give to somebody to help them? Because I think I probably struggle with, I'm very good at living intentionally with making the most of what I have, the time that I have left. Like that was one thing that did for me, was it reminded me, like it gave me a sense of urgency about life. What do you do for your clients to help them get out of depression, for example, or get grateful in their life? Is there anything practical tips that they can do to help them with that?
That's the thing. I got to be honest with you. I don't really have any like one size fits all method. Like when it comes to my coaching, I basically work with 2 video calls per week where I just sit down with them. We talk through video call. They tell me what's on their mind. And I just give them like my brutally honest opinion. And I tell them what I think that they should do and which direction they should take, which obviously differs from person to person. I found that when it comes to trying to install that mentality of you could die any day, like I see death around the corner, tomorrow doesn't exist. People who are healthy, you can't really, it doesn't really get through. It's like trying to explain to someone, to a blind person, like what a Picasso looks like. They'll never truly get it, because unless they've been through that trauma where it's, oh, we have this weird thing where we all think that we're gonna become 100 years old. And that's why people are able to have crappy jobs that they don't like, because they're more focused on their pension plan and they're more focused on stashing away money for the future than they are for living their actual current life, which is so insane when you think about it. Then again, the philosophical question arises when you talk about that. Is that something that would be viable for a society? Can a society function when you have a bunch of individuals who are just living for the moment?
Which dude, yeah, that's a great thing to talk about, because I did that before. So I'm a follower of Jesus and he changed my life, but I was super in the moment. I live for the day. If it feels good, do it. Pay the consequences later. That's the way I lived. It was YOLO every day. And it led me to bad places in my life where, because I wasn't thinking that the future would get here and I wouldn't like it. So what do you say to that?
That's a very good point. Now, I do want to say there is a very big difference between, for example, the YOLO mentality, which is very destructive and often just gives you instant pleasure, instant gratification, but then down the road, it just comes with anxiety, depression, and overall bad results in terms of life. So the way I look at it is, obviously, I don't mean to just live for every day like it's your last. That's not sustainable. I'm also somebody that's very big on health, very big on fitness and training, which is something that takes years to really, yield results, and you have to be patient for that. But there is a mid in between point where you can take it. So, for example, you have to, for example, stop doing things that people are just doing around you, and you're just following suit. One of those things is going to the club, and the relationship that we have in our culture, in our Western culture, with alcohol, for example, and staying up late at night. Those things, like, they're not gonna, first you have to figure out what's gonna give you a good feeling in a physical sense on a daily basis. And those are the things that I also talk about with my clients. Like, nutrition is huge, and just taking care of your body is huge. And that's where happiness comes from. Like, we're constantly doing things to make money and to obtain things that we never truly own. I don't really own this shirt. If someone takes it from me, then it's gone. I don't own this flat. I don't really, I can lose it all. The state can take it from me. People can take it from me. Circumstances can take it from me. The only thing that I truly own is this thing, like this meat vehicle that we call a body. Like, it's like a space shuttle to our soul. So I always talk about the first thing that you should invest in is your body. Don't buy the Ferrari, be the Ferrari. This is the one thing that you're never going to look back on and say, damn, I wish I hadn't invested so much time into building a healthy body. So that's why I start all my philosophy from that point. Like, you have to take care of your body first. So that does not go hand in hand with the YOLO mentality of partying every day and instant gratification. So that's where I start with. But then there has to be this balance between just working a crappy job because in 10 years this or that will happen. No, if you are spending most of your time feeling bad, if you're spending most of your time unhappy, resentful, just depressed, like, you just have to make a drastic change. Also, you don't have to get married and have kids. It's okay. Like, enough, like I said in the video, enough people are taking care of the baby making process. Again, this is something that we have just been institutionalized with, this idea that it's 30, time to settle down with someone, pop out some kids, otherwise I'm gonna be weird. No, follow your own path.
Love that, dude. In that video you talked about, most people would actually rather stay in abusive relationships or just dating the wrong person than be single. And it's so true. It really is viewed almost like a disease when you're single. Like, very few people will think you're doing it by choice, when in actuality it takes a very strong person to be single, because any moron could jump into relationship after relationship. That's easy to do. Learn how to be happy by yourself, bro. That's difficult, that's challenging, but at the same time, so I love the part about primary energy versus secondary energy. I love when you were mentioning that, because it reminds me of a principle that I wrote about in my book that I learned about from Think and Grow Rich. And it was called sex transmutation, where people throughout history have harnessed their sexual energy and used it to accomplish some pretty amazing things. And I know in my own life, I think that's how I was able to do most of the stuff I did the last 10 years, because I wasn't chasing tail. I took all my energy and I put it into whatever it was I was passionate about at that moment, in a book or the nonprofit or whatever. So talk a little bit about that, because I really think that's a concept that people don't understand well.
People fail to identify the single biggest advantage of being in a relationship. And no, it's not daily sex for those who are thinking that now. The biggest advantage of having a relationship is, finally, you have this ocean of time and resources ahead of you, because you're no longer scanning the periphery for, I'm going to talk as a
prospect.
Exactly, because that's how it is. Us men have been conditioned that way. We're so obsessed, like, we can't even, every woman that we encounter, we just do this weird thing where it's ass, tits, face. And it's
dude, you're right. At least you're going like, are they my wife? Are they like, that's where I'm at. I'm waiting. But every girl I meet that's attractive, I'm like, is she my wife? I'm like, on some level, I'm asking myself, checking my feelings. Is there anything telling me to take a step? It's all that processing going on. You're right.
And we've been conditioned. And then when we settle down with someone, at least the ones of us who are loyal and we're not trying to cheat, you turn off this button. It's like you turn off the settings. Oh, I did it. I got my woman. I got my girl. So now I can stop looking, and all of a sudden it's like, oh my God. So all of a sudden I have all this energy, I have all this time. And then men, for example, again, talking from my perspective, women, it's the exact same thing. All of a sudden things start moving ahead in our life in terms of making money. Our business gets better because we have more energy. We get in better shape, even all these things. And we're like, wow, this is amazing. And we put that on our partner, but really it's not necessarily because of the woman or the man, like whatever rocks your boat, but it's more because we have finally found a way. But it's sad that we need a relationship to turn that off, when also you could just live your life not chasing love. But it's hard because every single song that you hear in the radio is about breakups or meeting someone. There is no in between. No one has ever made a song about having a stable, balanced relationship. It doesn't exist.
Yeah.
It's crush or crash. It's euphoria or it's I hate you. And so we're just constantly clubbed and battered to death with these things about love and relationship. You turn on Netflix, you turn on the TV, it's all about love all the time. So how not think and feel that this is the greatest goal of them all? Like we love so much that we love when love hurts. People want to get into relationships just so that they can break up and have a messy breakup and tell social media about it. Like we're just so infatuated with that whole topic. We never get bored with it. And that's what I'm trying to tell people, like, take a step back and understand that this is just one facet of life. And there's many other things that you could be focusing your time on.
Yeah.
But usually we don't figure that out until we get into a relationship.
Yeah, no, for sure, man. I'm listening to you and I'm wondering in my own life, like how much bandwidth am I burning up by being single? Because I take it one step further where I look back at Adam and Eve and I'm like, Adam was created and then he got a job. Before Eve came along, he got a purpose. So I think you really need to figure out your purpose before you get with that person. But I definitely see value in, once you know what your purpose is, to find that right person to come alongside you. So you're not looking for anybody else. They're hopefully helping you. And just when you were talking, it's like, it's not just society, like culture, that tells you have to be in a relationship. You're right, though. It is. It's all the music and the television shows and all that. But as somebody that's been single for the last 10 years and not having sex like that, it's so hard to go home by yourself every night, because sometimes you just want somebody to cuddle, but then what cuddling leads to, like, you would ultimately lead to sex. You don't every night just continuing to go home and like continuously trying to find things to do that don't lead to sex, because you're not trying to go there. And that's freaking challenging. It's very hard to do. So that's why I said any moron can get into relationship after relationship. That's easy. Like, I think of Jennifer Lopez, not to say she's a moron, but she just hops from person to person, super thirsty, hasn't figured out how to be happy alone. It is challenging. I don't think it's just society, but I would love to find that person, because that right person should act the concept of a muse, like Napoleon had Josephine. It pulls out the best in you because you're trying to impress them. Very few people find, I think, that in a partner, because they usually just get into a relationship because they're lonely or society tells them they have to. And then next thing you know, they're with the wrong person, and they're not all that passionate about the relationship. So it never squeezes out the best in them.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Lopez, I always use her as an example to basically explain that you should never ever base your partner choice on looks. It's like multiple men have cheated on Jennifer Lopez. Just let that sink in. Tony Parker, the basketball player, he cheated on Eva Longoria in her absolute physical prime when she was the hottest girl on the planet. Just let that sink in. There is not a single woman out there. For every single beautiful woman that you see, somewhere there is a man who got tired of sleeping with her.
100%.
Not build a house on that. Like, doesn't matter how hot or how attractive they are. Like, it'll get old, it'll get tired. And if that's all there is, you're going to end up like Jennifer Lopez, which is so insane. One of the most desirable women of our time. If aliens came to our planet 2,000 years from now and would dig through magazines, they would identify her as our Cleopatra. That was like a goddess creature. She can't even keep a relationship. Men get tired of her because she's difficult. I don't know her personally, but I can assume that she's just too much to deal with. Yeah. And this is why I tell people, like, stop basing it on good looks. Like, we're all going to shrivel up and get old. I'm not saying that there shouldn't be any attraction there. Obviously, you need physical attraction, but if that's your primary thing, you will fail time and time again. And aside from that, I also agree with everything you said. It's very hard to be lonely. Like, I'm in a relationship right now. It's easy for me to sit here and talk about, I don't need someone, this and that. I understand that. And that's why I'm not against people, I'm not saying you can be in a relationship, but people just always, it's all or nothing. They go all in. Yeah. And they plan like 2 years, and now we have to get kids, now we have to get a house. No, just coexist, be happy together, and keep your own path.
So I actually made a video a few years ago called 10 Reasons Not to Have Sex Before Marriage. And one of the reasons was physical attraction fades. Because I know in my own life, I had dated some really beautiful women, and I always got to the point where I didn't want to even have sex with them anymore. I would be laying next to these beautiful women, arguably 10s, and I just wanted to go to sleep. I was hoping that they would just let me sleep and not want to have sex, because I just didn't want it, because our connection wasn't deep, and it didn't matter how hot they were. I didn't want it because it was something about a connection that wasn't there. I wanted to have sex with all the other girls, just not with them, which is, again, goes back to the fact of what you're saying. And I actually use that quote about show me the hottest girl in the world, and I'll show you a guy who's tired of effing her. It's true, because if you lead with that, if you're leading with physical attraction, it does not matter. It's like the trick that God, or if you want to call it the universe, played on us, where it's going to come back on you. And then you will end up having less sex in the long run as the person that waited and asked themselves the hard questions, pump the brakes a little bit, see if there's anything there more than physical attraction and take it a little bit slow, which is what I'm doing now, which is the opposite of what I always used to do. And I actually see it. I see it work all the time in my life, because I meet a lot of girls that I am physically attracted to initially. And I'm like, okay, let's wait a little bit and see who lives inside that tent. And then you start to see, yeah, she's pretty and I'd have sex with her, but I don't want to date her like long term. And then, so then where's that leave you? You could have sex and create some hurt feelings in a broken relationship, or have sex and potentially drift into a relationship with the wrong person out of obligation, which is what happened to me several times. And neither one of them are very good prospects. So it's better just to say, nope, let's just be friends. And that's where I leave it. But you're right. The physical attraction is beauty is a trap, is what I say. And it has gotten many a man. It's something I call the sex trap, where it lures you in, because if you see a beautiful woman and she's willing to have sex with you, it's almost, why would I say no?
Exactly.
And next thing you know, if you take it and you sleep with that person on too many, even you can get a soul tie after one time of having sex, but definitely multiple times having sex, you start to feel a certain kind of ownership of that person. You're like, you don't want other people to sleep with them. And now you're forced into a commitment maybe that you didn't want to be in, because you don't want somebody else to have sex with them. Meanwhile, you're looking over your shoulder at other women, wondering if you can be happier with them. And it's a mess, dude. I feel like I understand it really well, but it's so hard to do. Like, you have to master what you said of, you just got to learn how to be happy and content being single and be grateful for what you got, even if it drags out. Even if you're not in a relationship for a long period of time, you got to find the things that are good about that season.
Absolutely.
So tell me about your coaching programs. What do you do for your clients? Who's your primary person that you work with?
My primary.
What are they going through? Why do people reach out to you specifically?
I got you now. Okay. Obviously, I get a lot of people who have issues with self-confidence. Like, they look at me, they look at my scar and my disfigurement, and they go, how the hell is he feeling so good, so confident? How is he so comfortable in social settings? Usually they have far less issues than me in a physical sense. So they want to know the quote unquote secret, So they're like, teach me, please, like, how to be confident. This is a big part of my audience. I have people who struggle with addiction, alcohol addiction, other drug addictions. And then it's a wide variety. I've been blessed to have clients from Puerto Rico, the US, the UK, Argentina, Spain, Greece. So it's really an array of things. Like I said, the topic of physical looks, and then that tying into insecurity comes back a lot, but also just other things, like people trying to get their life together and making a change, and just not knowing how to do it. Like, I've started over many times, I've traveled the world, lived in many different places, so I can, I help with that as well. Relationship wise, I've helped clients find meaningful relationships the right way. I've guided them through that process. And I would say that's about the bulk. I once had a client from Norway who suffered from, I believe you call it MS. So she was not able to physically speak. She could only produce sounds, and she had constant spasms. And yeah, she basically hired me to help her control her spasms, her nervousness, and she wanted to basically reintegrate into society. And what I found the problem to be was that her entire surroundings, so her family, friends, kept telling her, "You're normal, don't worry about it," because that's kind of like a thing that they do in Scandinavia. They are always trying to make a point out of things, and they have this ideology, and that is borderline naive in some ways, and they're always trying to make a case to the rest of the world. So, for example, what they did in this case is they put this girl who's not able to literally conversate, and they gave her a job as an HR manager who actually had to conduct interviews with people. Can you imagine that? So people would come in for your job interviews, not knowing they were going to talk to somebody who literally can't talk. They would freak out, and as a result of that, she would spaz out and have her uncontrollable spasms. And I'm just like, that's terrible. Like, they're setting you up for failure, because they want to drive home this point of, you're normal, you can do anything that all of us can do, so we're going to make you an HR. So that's ridiculous. And I'm also very opposed to this mentality of we're all the same, we're equal, it's like, no, we're all different. We all have our strength points and our weaknesses, and it's okay to acknowledge that. I'm definitely not someone who is going along with this whole new ways of thinking where it's like we're all like, you can do anything. Like the single piece of the worst piece of advice that you can give to someone is A, follow your dreams, and B, you can do anything that you want to do, because you're setting them up for failure. You're not being truthful. You're not being realistic. So that's also what I do with my clients. I tell them, all of my clients have worked with psychiatrists and psychologists before they come to me, because that's what people do. They go to the people with the diplomas on the wall. They go to the experts, right?
Sure.
Thing is, most of these people usually haven't gone through that many things themselves. They have studied books. They have acquired knowledge, and I'm not diminishing that, but there's only so much that you can learn in practice. It's like, I've been through this. I had to rebuild my entire life, having to deal with my face, with not having bottom teeth, with not being able to speak. Like, I have gone through all the steps myself. So my proof is in the pudding. Like, I wear the resume on my face. So then they come to me like, well, I was skeptical about hiring a YouTuber for this. Like, let's roll with it. Let's see. I can honestly say, as crazy as it sounds, I haven't had a single negative experience. I haven't had one client that told me this wasn't they all say the same thing after a couple of weeks. They're like, well, I never would have expected this and these results, because I give them just straight up, straightforward advice. And I tell them when they're messing up. I don't cuddle them. I don't make them feel like, yeah, I just give them rational, logical advice from my point of view based on what I've went through. And yeah, more often than not, this is something that seems to be lacking in people's lives. We've become so afraid of not being correct and hurting people and saying inappropriate things. So people don't really give advice anymore. They're just, I'm not gonna meddle, I'm not gonna say anything. So that's basically how I do it, man. And it's been an incredible journey. And because of that, like, I get so much joy out of it. I get so much helping people and figuring out ways where you can change their reality and help them see things. And it's just, there's nothing I would have never expected. That's what I love. YouTube is not my passion. YouTube is a tool for me to get the word out there about who I am.
Yeah.
And my content. I'm not concerned about YouTube. Like, but you need that platform. Ironically, you need those 55,000 subscribers, because now you're legit. But when I had 500, then I was nobody.
Yeah.
It's this horrible numbers game where we attach quality to numbers. So I had to play the game. You can't change the quote unquote matrix from the outside. You got to change it from the inside. You have to get those numbers up. You have to get those videos used. And then then all of a sudden you're a credible source. Well, really, I was the same guy all along. So I took those steps. I put in the work. I've been doing it for 5 years. And now, I'm very happy that the client thing is going really well.
Definitely gives you a higher perceived value, I've found, creating content. But I definitely believe in what you're saying too about learning in the trenches. So I put together a couple coaching programs from making radical changes in my own life. And I don't think that I could have learned these in any other way. And people might look at me and be like, who are you to put out a course? And I'm like, look at my life 10 years ago and look at what I'm doing now and tell me that I haven't figured out how to make significant changes in your life and sustainable, actually, that have lasted. So no, man, I love what you're doing. What does the future hold for you? What do you see yourself? Is it just more coaching, or are you going to travel more, or what do you think?
Finishing my book. So Rotten Lemons, that's the working title. When life gives you lemons, you make lemonade. But what do you do when life gives you rotten lemons? So that's why I call it that. I'm really trying to get this book out there. Travel. I want to meet people, man. There's people who are confident behind a camera. There's a lot of them. They're very confident when they're doing the whole selfie thing and they're making stories. And then you need them in real life. And it's like, oh, all that magic is gone, because it's a lot easier to talk into a lens than it is to look into a person's eyes who's standing right in front of you. I'm aware that I come across confident on camera, but I would say I'm more comfortable even in real life. So I want to get out there and do public speaking. I want to do gigs where I can just get on a stage and connect with people. That's where I'm trying to take it right now, man. I'm excited.
A TED Talk, man. You got to do a TED Talk.
Yes, you're right. But those are, man, maybe you can get me in. Maybe you can use your connections to put out a good word for me. But
Maybe somebody watching this out there, if you guys got any connections to the TED Talk world, hit up my man Lorenz Dries. He needs to be on a stage for sure. Thanks for coming on, dude. I really enjoyed talking to you and meeting you. Hopefully we can stay connected. Where can everybody find?
So YouTube, Wounded Viking, that is WOUNDED, Wounded, and then space Viking. Very simple. Instagram, same handle at Wounded Viking. If you want to directly email me for a coaching or business inquiries, you can do so at Lorenz, that is LORENZ .Dries, which is DRIES, Lorenz.Dries at gmail.com. I'm sure you'll put it in the description as well. So just send me an email. I'm old school. I have a website, but I haven't updated it in ages. I just like it easy and simple. So if you want to turn your life around, if you're trying to get over a breakup, if you're trying to reinvent yourself, if you just want to make a positive change, send me an email and we can talk about how we can work on that together. And that's about it. If you like my videos, go check them out. There's a bunch of cool content on there. And if you like this talk that I had right now, then I'm sure that you'll like my channel.
Awesome, man. Thanks so much for coming on. I will put those links in the show notes, and hopefully we'll stay in touch and talk soon.
Absolutely, man. If you ever want me to come back for a part 2, I'll be right there.
Hopefully I can come over to Belgium and visit you sometime.
I'll give you a tour on the good Belgian deers, man. I'll show you all the ones that you need to try.
All right, cool. Thanks, Lorenz.
Awesome, man.